No, it says Steve on it. They specifically put it there. I don't know why. I just know it was deliberate. Oh, yeah.
Every time I come in here, it's new change. Is this
So I
somebody blame me? Every time I come in here, somebody's moving. I think so.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We are going to get started with our work session this evening. Just a couple quick things. Normally, with our work sessions, we don't do public comments or public input, but this evening I think we have some business owners here that I would like to allow them time to speak and ask questions as well. I know we have Mr. Gupta from the convenience store, and do we have anyone else?
Todd Allen, Brandon Payne, and Brockway. I'm here on behalf of Olathe Health.
Oh, excellent. Okay. All right, but I'm going to turn this over to Tim Liv for introductions.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So, as you're all aware, we're in the second phase of the improvements to the I-35 and Gardner-Road interchange, and almost a year or so ago last year, we asked KDOT to come in and give an update on the conceptual design of the interchange and the status and cost and those type of things. Well, so they've now proceeded to the field check stage, which is basically the last stage before you really get, when things get nailed down, then they move ahead to final design. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring them in and kind of give you an update on where everything is at with the project. So that's what we've done. We've just asked KDOT and to come in tonight. And so with us is the project manager, Steve Bass with KDOT. He's here online from Topeka. Simon Sun is the project manager for the design consultant, which is HDR. And also with us tonight, Mike Reinhardt from KDOT is the KDOT Metro Area engineer, and he'll be here to answer some questions as well after the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and just turn it over to Steve and let them start with the presentation.
All right, thanks, Tim. Good evening. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay, and hopefully everyone is able to see the PowerPoint presentation I have hopefully shared with everyone. Can I get a thumbs up if everyone can see that okay?
Thumbs up, yes.
Yes, we
Okay.
can see it.
Great. Well, hey, thanks for inviting us to speak tonight to give you an update on the I-35 Gardner-Road project. As Tim mentioned, I have Simon here with me with HDR. Our project team's been working hard on this project to get it to where it's at today. So I guess we've got a PowerPoint presentation put together, and then at the end we'll obviously allow time for questions. So go ahead and get started on that then. So for the benefit of those that might be new to the council, or just a quick refresher, how did we get here? So, project background, the existing Gardner-Road bridge over I-35 was built in 1959. It's currently a narrow 2-lane roadway with no shoulders. KDOT recently replaced the bridge rail and performed deck repairs in 2008, and I think the bridge is due for another round of deck repairs sometime in the near future. Like I said here, conditions suggest repair or replacement would be needed in the future. So as far as the interchange itself goes, interchange was also built in 1959. As I mentioned earlier, it's a narrow 2-lane roadway. There are no turn lanes on the ramps or Gardner-Road, and currently the area experiences backup in peak hours, particularly the southbound I-35 to northbound Gardner-Road movement in the morning, and then in the evening hours, the PM peak hours, where heavy traffic movement is from southbound Gardner-Road to northbound I-35. Moving on, just some additional project background, if anyone doesn't remember. The city had applied for some MARC funding to replace this bridge, and back in February 2019, MARC awarded $6 million towards this construction of this project. KDOT agreed to participate in the preliminary engineering for the project. And so, as Tim mentioned earlier, preliminary design or field check plans about 50% complete. We held that meeting back in December of last year, right before the holidays. And so right now, the final design's ongoing, including we're getting ready to start the right-of-way process, as well as the utility relocation process. So here's kind of where we're at project schedule-wise. You can see here, we're kind of at the preliminary design, ended in December of 2021. So now we've rolled into the final design activities, which includes final design, right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation. Currently, the project is scheduled for letting in September of 2023. So we have that on track for September letting of 2023. So with that, I guess I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Simon and let him discuss some of the maybe some more specific details about the interim improvements as well as the ultimate improvements for this area. So go ahead, Simon. Simon, you're on mute.
How about that? Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Steve. So kind of like Steve said, I want to give everybody a refresher for those of you who may have seen this before, and then for those who may be new, perhaps as an introduction. So what's up on the screen right now, it is a bridge preservation project. So what is that, right? So Steve has mentioned the existing bridge is older and it requires some rehab work. Functionally, with the existing 2-lane road with no shoulder, is also functionally obsolete. So from a timing perspective, there are two things that's going on. I'm going to talk about the interim improvement project, or the project that's going to happen in the near term that we're going into advertisements in September of 2023. That project is a bridge preservation project. What does that entail is the replacement of the existing bridge over Gardner-Road, and some interim ramp improvement project to increase the capacities for the southbound off-ramp as well as the northbound on-ramp. So the purpose of the design consideration, or primary purpose, is to relieve the near-term congestions that's on there, plus add accommodations for pedestrian accommodations from the north side of I-35 to the south side. One of the other goals or consideration is it must be compatible with the local street improvement project that the city has recently completed. And another thing too is it has to be compatible with the ultimate interchange configurations for at this location, which I'll kind of show here in just a moment and expand on that here later. Understanding that the replacement of a structure is going to have a certain amount of traffic impact, we also look at and see how we can look at the alignments and maybe tweak it in such a way that can reduce the impact to the traveling public through this area. So maybe some physical key features here. Certainly, I talked a little bit earlier about widening of the southbound I-35 off-ramp as well as the northbound I-35 on-ramp. In addition to that, the bridge is also going to be widened from the existing 2-lane configuration to a new 4-lane structure. And attached to the structure is also going to be a trail facility on the bridge as well throughout the entire length. What it does also do is it with the 4-lane structure, what it does is allow us to include additional turn lanes to accommodate some of those heavy movements that we referenced earlier. Also, the new bridge, as you have seen on the screen right now, the dark black squares, if you will, a rectangle over I-35, the new bridge is going to be offset to the east side of existing structure. The goal of that is to see about allowing the structure to be built on an offset for as much as possible, thereby minimizing the closure time on Gardner-Road. Next slide, please, Steve. So I mentioned earlier there is an ultimate improvement on here. So as you look at the picture on the left there at the screen, it is a diverging diamond interchange configuration. A couple things to point out with regards to design considerations. It does provide a long-term congestion relief in the area, while the interim configuration that I shown a moment ago with the traffic projections and the 4-lane bridge in the area, we're anticipating that the interchange could handle traffic sufficiently through maybe 2035 thereabouts. But with the ultimate diverging diamond interchange as shown on the screen here, the service life will actually extend beyond that. It will also, much like the interim interchange configuration, this ultimate improvement project also maintains the pedestrian accommodations from the north side of I-35 across the south. It is one of the key element is that the bridge that's going to be built with the interim project is going to be compatible with this ultimate improvements. Just a little bit forward look ahead, if you will. And this improvement that you see on the screen here is also compatible with Locust Street improvements and ties into it, dovetail into some design features. So once again, with you can kind of also see that with the DDI, it straddles the existing structure, if you will, so that it would in the future when you do implement the ultimate configuration, you would be able to construct a new structure on an offset alignment as well, with the intent to minimize as much as possible the impact to Gardner-Road when the future interchange is implemented. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Simon. So now I guess we just want to kind of give you kind of a cost comparison of what we presented back in March of 2021 until now. So you can see construction cost in fiscal year $24. The construction cost did increase. We went from $12 million estimate last year to $17.6 million estimate right now. And some of those increases in cost were due to the amount of pavement to the north as well as to the ramps. As we've been fine-tuning this design, we've been adding some additional pavement, as well as we've also been fine-tuning some of the bridge costs. But also too, I will say that KDOT is seeing an increase in unit prices on all projects that have been let recently, and so kind of a combination of all those things has led to a slightly higher cost than what we presented last year. The preliminary engineering and construction engineering costs, those are just simply 10% of the construction cost estimate. And then as far as right-of-way and utility relocations go, those values remain unchanged at this time. Just don't have maybe a good handle on the right-of-way costs. I know we are in an urban environment, and it's tough for our right-of-way KDOT right-of-way staff to come up with good dollar amounts because we've got a lot of business owners, and until we get into the right-of-way process, such as appraisal and acquisition, it's tough to say at this point. And then with the utility relocations, we've got several pretty big utilities that if and when they need to be relocated, they could be costly. We've got a gas line in the area, and some other high-dollar utilities. So ultimately, that's why we left those numbers the way they were from last year. And you can see the total of all those, construction, preliminary engineering, construction engineering, and so on is roughly $24 million.
So, Mr. Bass, I'm looking at this, and I know you're saying slightly higher, but it's anywhere from 40 to 50% higher in less than a year. And my concern is, we're talking about laying these contracts in December of 2023. I can't even imagine how much more this might balloon in the interim. What kind of measures are we going to potentially take here to do some cost containment here? Because, at this point, it's going to be very difficult for us to bridge the gap on the funding for this.
Right, and I guess if you can table that question till I go through the next slide, because I think, and then maybe I'll get to your question if that's okay.
That's fine, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So I guess then moving on. So this is a project cost breakout by funding source. And so you can see, again, we compared it to March of 2021 to now. And so I'll just focus more on the now columns rather than refer back. But, so with this project, like I mentioned earlier, there was $6 million of MARC funds that were obligated for 2021 and 2022. Well, because we couldn't get the plans designed and let the project in that time frame, KDOT reached out to MARC about doing a fund swap. So what ended up happening was, and I'm not sure if Ken has shared this information or maybe he wasn't fully aware, but the MARC federal funds were removed from the project so that that $6 million could be used on other projects in the region. And so then KDOT will then come in and use the KDOT federal funds to make up that fund difference. So the $6 million we're showing as MARC here, but there was a fund swap there. There was $1.5 million obligated by the city. And then in a meeting, gosh, it's been a while ago, KDOT said that we would handle or take care of the additional costs for construction for that project. So as it shows here, the funding source, $6 million in MARC money, $1.5 million for the city, and then the $10.1 million for KDOT. So I guess whoever asked that question, do we want to take a step back and discuss those questions right now, or do you want me to keep moving forward?
Well, I mean, I appreciate this is Councilman Shute. Okay. So the reason why I bring this up is because, I mean, obviously we're seeing materials and manpower and other costs that are escalating, and we know that this won't be let till 2023, and there's nothing in the market that suggests that this is going to go down in price in the next 2 years. So I guess the question is really twofold. One is, and I appreciate the fact that KDOT's standing in the breach for some of this now, but what's to say that in another 1.5 to 2 years, costs might double again? And that's a concern of mine.
No, I think your concerns are valid. I think we at KDOT have those same concerns, as we're looking at programming dollars for various projects throughout the state. It is a concern. I do know, and I don't remember if Simon mentioned this, but the bridge is a fair size amount cost towards this project. I think that bridge is around $9 million, give or take. I think that's right, Simon. Is that correct?
Yes, okay. That's in the right ballpark.
Okay. And so, with this project, and as Simon mentioned earlier, we are designing this bridge to accommodate the future DDI. And so, but it's also being designed to span, an ultimate 8-lane section of I-35. So, it's going to be a little bit longer than, it's going to, comparable, it's going to look like maybe more of the Homestead Lane interchange to the south. Mm-hmm. But, as far as, concerns about rising costs and what we can do, like I mentioned, the bulk of this is bridge cost, or I said $9 million of this is bridge costs. But we're also, designing the project to preserve ultimate access for the corridor along Gardner-Road. And so, some of the, like, for example, realignment of 191st Street to the south, we're having to do that to move that away from Interchange to provide better separation from the side road to the ramp terminals. And so it just, all those things, the cost increases with all that stuff. So I probably didn't do a good job of answering your question, but it's kind of tough to say it. It is a concern to us, I should say. Simon, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add a thought there as well. it's difficult sometimes to strike a balance between the rising cost due to inflations and other elements that's outside of anyone's control per se. In this case, there are certain amount of improvement that you're going to have to include in order to achieve the design life that we want for a given project, Councilman. You know, certainly if the rising cost is such that, you know, it becomes an issue, not just for this project. You know, if that should that happen, it would happen on a program level as well for KDOT across all the projects. And at that time, some decisions may have to be made. You know, but we're hopeful that perhaps this is a blip on the radar, and that maybe the inflationary pressure will reduce in the next year or two, hopefully, by the time we get to the letting. And that's something that, you know, KDOT as well as the design team is going to monitor on a regular basis, just to make sure we stay ahead, or at least be able to have a strategy put in place to address that should it come to fruition.
Thank you.
To that point, this is Councilman Potter. Is there a written strategy being developed right now?
As it pertains to the increased costs?
Yeah.
To answer your question, no.
Okay.
You know, and you know, like we talked earlier, you know, the city is capped at $1.5 million. So, you know, if this project cost does continue to escalate, you know, KDOT is willing to fund the additional dollar amounts for this project.
That's reassuring.
So, okay. Well, you know, I think everyone, I don't need to read the slide, but, you know, as it shows here, you know, preliminary engineering, you know, the KDOT will pay for 90% of the preliminary engineering, the city 10%. As it relates to construction engineering, KDOT will fund that. But then right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation, the city will be responsible for those costs. So you can kind of see down there the totals and how all that breaks down. You know, $6 million mark funds, 4.48 million for the city, which includes the $1.5 million construction costs, and then also right-of-way and utilities. So with that, I'm sure there's some things that the council has heard or had hoped to have heard, but we didn't present that. But we just, you know, in respect of your time, we want to allow time for questions from you and others. So I guess before we do that, I will say back to this previous slide. Right now, KDOT is drafting up a city-state agreement for this project, and so once we get a draft put together, Tim and I don't know if Kellen's there or not, but we will reach out to you guys and share that draft with you to get kind of some back and forth on the comments to get that hopefully approved fairly soon, and what you see here will be captured into that city-state agreement as well. So, said with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you. Why don't we start with council, and you might want to say your name before you speak, possibly. So, questions, council.
I think Council Vice President or Council President should had a couple of items he wanted to bring up. So,
my main thing is that I'd like to hear how this current plan works with the existing businesses. Looking at the map, you can see that, you know, we've got this two-phased approach to this overall bridge deck, and my main concern is on that north side where we close that access to the convenience store on the west side. And what I am curious about is also Olathe Health is on the east side there. What our options are, what KDOT's restrictions are as far as providing access to all those businesses on basically south of 188th Street.
Okay. I don't know, Simon, I think now would probably be an appropriate time maybe to share some of the additional information that we didn't have included in the presentation.
Yep.
And kind of we can maybe walk through. Bear with me, I'm going to stop sharing my presentation here, and I'm going to open up some additional information that we put together just in anticipation of questions that we would receive tonight. So bear with me real quick.
Steve, slide 7, just to help with that a little bit.
All right. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
We've got it.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, some of the things that the project team looked at when looking at access considerations is, you know, one of the things we really look closely at is the KDOT access management policy. You know, we looked at things like safety, efficiency, level of service, or congestion, as well as the future development that's going on in the area. And with this project, as Simon mentioned before, we are looking at preserving the ultimate right-of-way with this project. And so let me flip to the next slide real quick. And so, you know, here's maybe a kind of a blown up view of some of the access and what we're doing with the current access along the Gardner-Road profile. And if you want, we can kind of step you through here. So what you see here on the screen right now is 191st Street, existing 191st Street is just located just south of the ramp terminal. Well, we are going to, we're proposing to realign that south there along Gardner-Road. And I believe some of this you've seen already when we presented this back in March, even though it was kind of higher level at that time. But with that, you know, we've got some access point to the Olathe Ford and RV sales place. We're moving that access to the south as well to line up with 191st Street. And then that access is going to the west will be used to serve the school district bus barn, as well as the new access to Olathe Ford and RV. And I will say that we've got several meetings coming up here within the next couple weeks with some of the property owners in the area to discuss our plans and get some input from them as well. And Olathe Ford and RV is one. We've got another meeting set up with the school district and some other business owners out there. So,
Steve,
yes.
May I supplement?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think it's important for the council to know one of the primary, you know, Steve mentioned earlier, access management policy is one of the key guidance documents for us in making decisions to move access. So, you know, so there's a minimum requirement of, I'll just round it to about 1,300 feet for separation from ramp terminal to kind of full access. So what you see on the screen here, the realigned 191st Street intersection / you know, Olathe RV Center, that is approximately 1,300 feet. So keep that in mind as we're talking through the next two scenarios, which is the specifically address the questions there is we try to keep full access a certain distance, 1,300 feet plus or minus. So you can see that's a reason for relocating the existing Olathe RV entrance. Also, another number that will pop up here shortly is minimum separation from ramp terminal to right in, right out. So there's a number that we'll talk about as well as we get a little further down this section here. You may be asking yourself, there is that little access, you know, to the Southern Star gas terminal, which is very close to the intersection or interchange ramp terminal, you may ask. So the reason we left that there is because A, we can't relocate that utility, not without a significant cost. But then the other consideration is that simply the number of vehicles that will be accessed that facility is very rare. You know, I don't know the exact number, but it's certainly not, you know, not 10 or 20 vehicles per day. So that's one of the reasons why we're making the concession, thinking about the cost to relocate a certain things versus the traffic impact that it may have. Thank you, Steve. Steve, do I lose you?
Sorry. Okay. No. Thanks, Simon. So what you see on the screen here is you've got the Olathe Health Urgent Care Center, kind of on the lower right corner of the screen. Just straight west of there, there's that Phillips 66 station, and then to the north of the Phillips 66 is a new Quick Trip that's being constructed right now. Which we didn't have the latest aerial on that, so we weren't able to show that. But so as it relates to the Olathe Health Urgent Care Center and the Quick Trip, you know, as Simon mentioned before about access spacing from the interchange to a full access movement was about 1,350 feet. The minimum distance for ride in, ride out is, I believe it's 750 feet. Is that right?
That is
Simon?
correct. 750 feet.
And so that the entrance to the Quick Trip in Olathe Health is kind of just beyond that 750 feet. So we will be providing ride in, ride out access at those locations. But, you know, unfortunately the entrance location at the Phillips 66 is only about 350 feet north of the Interchange ramp terminal, and like we mentioned earlier, that doesn't meet our access management policy.
So,
go
my
ahead.
question
Any
then
questions?
is, with your, I understand policies, you know, we all deal with them. What's the gating factor for why there's those numbers, right? Is it to reduce certain aspects of the design, I assume, but what is it so that we can try to figure out how to address this that we need to actually focus on?
Okay, so here we prepared a slide for access modifications. So here's a list of our considerations for behind closing the access to Phillips 66. And I don't know, Simon, do you want to kind of take this from here, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll be glad to do that.
Okay, good.
I'll be glad to do that. So, you know, Steve mentioned earlier with regards to if you look at the access management policy, the recommendation in there is that's the ride in, ride out access to be located no less than 750 feet from the ramp terminal. In this case, we said earlier it's about 350, 400 feet thereabouts to the existing entrance. So, you know, as we look through the consideration, right? So policy aside, so, you know, we kind of look at it from multiple angles, safety considerations. So if you kind of look at kind of the blow up view there in the upper left-hand corner of the pictures, if you will, right in that area is the entrance is it's in conflict with right turn lanes that's being implemented for the southbound right turn onto southbound I-35. You know, anytime you have multiple actions going on where people are trying to do a lane shift to get on a right turn lane, you couple that with conflicting movements from a side road or entrance or what have you, that is not a preferred situation. There's just some safety considerations for having that conflict in the same area. The second element in there from a safety perspective is that picture on the lower left-hand corner. That is a kind of a recent picture that's taken during construction where, you know, there's a little bit of driveway reconstruction that took place with the Locust Street project. Probably what I'm going to kind of point to your attention is that, at least looking at the plans, there is no sidewalk continuation. This picture is kind of looking towards the south, towards the south end. So with this design, there's not a sidewalk continuation across the driveway to the south. So you can kind of notice that the grade there across, if you were to think about a sidewalk projecting to the south, that the cross slope of that sidewalk is steeper than what ADA would allow, which is a maximum of 2% cross slopes. You can kind of take a look at this picture and you quite, get a sense that that driveway perhaps is steep, and it's certainly steeper than 2% cross slope from an ADA perspective. So if you were to imagine that, with this project, we are continuing that sidewalk to the south side across I-35. So if we have to flatten out the driveway to provide ADA accommodations to meet that requirement, that driveway grade would get even steeper. So safety perspective, certainly during winter event with perhaps rain, snow, ice, that would not be an ideal situation. And then, of course, when you take that in consideration with kind of where the future improvements are going to be for the UIC or for the ultimate configurations, Steve, I made sure you'd back up one slide for me. I would direct your attention to kind of that same entrance area that we're talking about for that Phillips 66 driveway. So in the future with the UIC, that sidewalk's going to push even further onto the property. So, there is knowing that there's a conflict in the future to which it further necessitate the closure in the future. It's one of those things that we considered in making a recommendation to close that today. So, Steve, back to the next slide, please. So maybe step away from safety for a little bit and kind of think about traffic operations as well. We've mentioned several times now in this presentation, that the traffic volume is high today, and it's only projected to get even higher, to the point where with this interim project that we're showing on the screen right now, that we're implementing a dual turn lanes on the southbound approach to China across the bridge to get onto northbound I-35. So there's a significant amount of traffic going through there, especially during the peak hour. So when you think about the way this intersection is laid out right in front of this driveway, there's 2 lanes going southbound in this area. But note that the left lane, the inside lane, it's going to be a left turn only lane. So that is a dedicated, it'll transition to an exit only, if you will, as you get across the bridge. Where the right through lane is the one lane that's going to carry you south through the bridge to the south side of I-35. So you can imagine that with that much traffic expected to turn left for southbound traffic, that's an entrance at this close location. It's going to perhaps have some potential conflicts with the left turn movement. More specifically, for a vehicle that will be exiting a convenience store, that the amount of people that could be wanting to make a right out of the driveway and then trying to turn left on I-35 is potentially high. So those folks are going to be potentially turning into the right through lane and then slowing down and trying to find a gap to get into the left lane. Imagine, during rush hour traffic when people are trying to turn left and those lanes are full, that could potentially cause a slowdown for people trying to go south. And it's just one of those things that is not preferred from a traffic operation standpoint, and potentially lead to some additional safety concerns for weaving and perhaps potentially rear-ending accidents and things like that. So from that perspective, it's another reason why we're recommending the closure. And then lastly, without spending a whole lot of time, because we talked through the access management consideration already, certainly that driveway is halfway. It's about half as much as what's recommended. I know at the last meeting when we came and talked to you folks a year ago almost, there were some suggestions on whether we could provide a median in this area to perhaps prevent people from turning left across the driveway, and we did look at that as well. So as we consider that, if we were to put a median through here, what that would probably mean is that you're gonna have to push the driving lanes further out on each side of the roadway, which means you're gonna be that much more onto the property. So which will make the ADA grade, the driveway grade, that much more of a problem. So, you know, of all those aspects together, those reasoning together, is what led to the engineering team's recommendation to close the driveway.
So thank you for the detailed information. Can you go to the slide then that shows basically 189th Terrace or whatever we're calling that? Does it have a median to where we don't have left operations there?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so from the Phillips 66 driveway to the north, the question is, from the Phillips 66 driveway to the north, are there any additional opportunities for crossing traffic?
Yes.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, so in this case, with this concept right here, if you were to close the Phillips 66 driveway like we're talking about here, there will be a continuous raised median to the north until you get to the full access intersection at Locust Street or 188th Street. We're preventing all left turn movement across Gardner-Road.
So currently with this design, unless a road is built, you can't get up to Olathe Health without coming southbound on I-35. Because there's no road coming
Yep,
on the east
I understand
side.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the way it's currently shown, yes, you're absolutely right. I know one of the questions from I apologize, I didn't know which councilman it was, but you know, anybody that's traveling south on Gardner-Road is not going to be able to make a left turn to Olathe Urgent Care. Now, with that said, that was something that the design team has talked about extensively, and kind of that's something that we're planning on being addressed with the right-of-way negotiation process, because certainly, you know, removing an access like this would require some additional discussions, and those conversations, at least and Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong, typically takes place during the right-of-way negotiation process.
That's correct, Simon.
Thank you, Steve. And to that end, you know, the left turn from Quick Trip, if you'll be going on a Quick Trip driveway trying to turn left to go northbound on Gardner-Road, a similar conversation would have to take place as well.
Has there been any discussion amongst the engineers about putting in what would be considered maybe a frontage road area along this area, so that might make it a little bit easier to get into some of these places? I'm thinking more around on this particular diagram, it'd be south, or not south, but on the below Gardner-Road. That would give people access, right in, right out access to the Phillips 66 without having to go down Locust.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is perhaps a connection from Phillips 66 that goes north, you know, kind of parallel to Gardner-Road, that connects to the Quick Trip drive.
Correct.
Did I capture that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. That was something that we have discussed as a team as well at KDOT. Although one of the challenges that's with that would be you have to go through a parcel that's not owned by the Phillips 66 property. So if that is something that is well, I guess we're assuming that may not be ideal. So, but it's not certainly a possibility if that's something that is palatable to the property owner, I guess.
So a shared entrance to the three parcels there, Quick Trip, the middle parcel, and Phillips 66 is viable as far as KDOT's concerned?
Well, I think it's something that we'll have to take a little closer look at. Like Simon mentioned, we've kind of tossed it around a little bit. Obviously, it would require, you know, some additional right-of-way in order to construct that frontage road or access road, whatever you want to call it. But that's something that, you know, like I said, we'd have to take a little bit closer look at it to see the feasibility of that and how that would work together.
Yeah, this is Tori Roberts. I'm council member Tori. I don't really like that we don't have access to these businesses. This kind of bothers me, just in all of it, actually. I don't like that we're closing off the Phillips 66. I don't like that you only can really come southbound on I-35 to Olathe Medical Center. I don't know. I don't think we're being good business partners to these businesses in these locations. This really concerns me.
Councilman Van Potter again. To that point, if I understand correctly, there's going to be no left-hand turns out of the Quick Trip. Isn't that just going to create a problem going further southbound on Gardner to flip around?
I think they want you to come out to Locust and go up to the light.
Oh, so there's a rear
Yeah.
entrance to
They want
Quick
you
Trip.
to come out and back around to the light.
Okay.
I mean, obviously the trucks would be. You wouldn't be. The trucks wouldn't have a right turn out of there anyway.
Right.
At least on the businesses on that side, at least has the locus. But how are you getting, if you're coming from Gardner, down Gardner-Road to get to Olathe Medical Center, how are you getting there?
There, on the original plat, which is, obviously, this is not the original plat. The original plat has 199th Terrace looping up and hitting 188th Street.
Okay.
189th Terrace going up to 188th Street. So that portion was not finished, and part of the reason why was because that's part of a future phase of development, which hasn't been started yet. But that was the original plan. But I understand where you're coming from. That means that people would have to turn left to get to 188th Street, knowing that they would have to do that to get to Olathe Medical, which is, if you're in an emergency situation, urgent care, or if there's a hospital there at some point, that could cause problems. And I believe we do have an individual from Olathe Health that might be able to provide some information on that.
Hello, Todd Allenbrand, Payne and Brockway. Thank you for allowing me to get up and speak. First off, I think, you know, from the standpoint on the north side of I-35 with Olathe Health, I think you'll see that, you know, that's going to be a large impact, not only right-of-way taking, but the access. And I can't 100% speak for Olathe Health because I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with them, but this is the first time, to be honest with you, I've seen this plan where they've closed off 189th Terrace. And looking at it, that's not going to be acceptable for Olathe Health. And the current concept plan that we're looking at doing, it's not on the street, so unfortunately I can't really share it publicly, but it completely changes from what you guys saw a couple of years ago. So one thing I just want to point out, and this is probably for KDOT and the design engineers, can you look at K10 and Ridgeview down the south, 95th Street to the east at I-35, and Rowe Avenue and 435 to both north and south? I think you'll find out that Rowe Avenue to the north is probably 600 feet to the diverging ramp section, and to the south on Rowe, it's probably basically just like this setup, 800 feet. And at 95th and I-35 to the east, it's probably right around 700 feet for a full-blown intersection. And then the one on K10 and Ridgeview, we actually just got that approved by KDOT last year to turn that into a full-blown intersection. And it's exactly the same distance as this one. And it also has another intersection that's probably 700-800 feet to the south that has full turning movement. So I think by you closing this off saying safety, I think you missed the factor of patients that might have an emergency where they need to be removed from that facility and taken to Olathe Medical Center, let's say. Now you're asking them to divert an eighth of a mile north, do a U-turn to go back a quarter mile to get on the I-35. So I think this is going to be a problem. We'll have to sit down with Olathe Health because the plan to make that connection where they showed a couple years ago, it will be a connection, but it'll be more like a commercial entrance into their site. So there's gonna have to be some talk. I mean, if we can't get this settled, then I'm sure Olathe Health would be more than happy to have KDOT or the city of Gardner construct them a road to get up to 188th Street that would meet their needs and their design of their conceptual plan we're working on currently. Thank you, that's all I've got.
This is Mayor Winters. I have a question. You mentioned the right-of-way process is when some of this you would expect to get cleared up. I mean, I would think this would be, some of these things would be prior to that. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think that would be something, you know, in this design stage even, that we would want to address.
Well, I think when Simon had mentioned that it would be taken care of in the right-of-way process, you know, we don't know what the ultimate plan is for the Olathe Health interior circulation. So I think, you know, when we say that, you know, obviously, you know, when right-of-way goes out, they look at access or the closure of access, and they compensate accordingly. Now, for example, in Olathe Health, you know, when we say that it's going to be handled in the right-of-way negotiations, you know, I don't know which direction this is going, but, you know, one possibility could be, you know, KDOT would put some money towards access off of 188th Street, for example. And so that's when we say that, you know, it'll be handled in a right-of-way negotiation. You know, we don't know, like I said, we don't know what the ultimate layout of the street system is in that area.
This is Councilman Baldwin again. I understand what you're saying, and obviously seems like we're gonna have to have, you know, a few more powwows with people in the room, but what are your thoughts, you know, gut instinct on taking out the median at 189th? Because that changes the ballgame completely.
Simon, do you want to touch on the traffic operations of Gardner-Road if we were to make that a full access intersection? Or
You know, you know, when the concept was first laid out, right, we looked at the access management policy, and the traffic operations was performed assuming that the crossing movement, I guess it would be limited just right in, right out. There will not be any crossing movement. So what I would expect is if you were to allow crossing movements, and it will certainly, you know, reduce the efficiency of the traffic moving on Gardner-Road, and also in turn leads to some adverse impact to the operation of the interchange. So you may have to go back and look at some alternatives to see what the impacts would be. If you ask me today what exactly the impact's going to be, I probably cannot tell you with certainty exactly what that would be, but it would have some adverse impact to the operations of the interchange as well as the through movements. If you were to have a, you know, if a signal gets installed, it'll probably have the same impact. I just can't tell you to what extent that impact would be.
So Simon, sorry, this is Steve Shute again, Councilman Shute. So I'm looking at that, and I understand where you're coming from with regard to the you know, to a full intersection there. However, I believe that the individual from Olathe Health has already maintained that there are several intersections, several interchanges within the Kansas City metro area that have a very similar traffic flow, you know, traffic pattern, as well as access within that 1,000 foot, within 1,400 feet of the approaches to the ramps. I'm very familiar with the 95th Street, and that carries a lot more traffic than Gardner-Road does. And they have a full intersection very close to those ramps and the Diverging Diamond interchange. So are you saying there's no flexibility here?
well, I think, you know, as part of this bridge replacement project, you know, we are looking at preserving the access, right-of-way, and other features as part of the ultimate corridor. I know, you know, the location you're talking about. You know, I'll admit some of those to me are too close. I know, and I'm not that familiar with the I-35 95th Street interchange, but I think from what little I know about it, you know, you know, when they reconstructed 95th Street recently, you know, they had some challenges ahead of them trying to maintain access to some of those places where they had originally had access. So, like I said, we're just trying to preserve access for this project as well as for the ultimate DDI interchange, because as Simon showed earlier, the footprint of the interchange gets larger with the DDI configuration.
Can I switch gears just slightly and ask about the bridge replacement?
Sure.
Is that, as that project moves along, will there be a time when the bridge is completely shut down?
So yeah, we have looked at that, and we've also prepared some slides regarding anticipation of discussion about that particular thing. So let me flip back here real quick. What you see on the screen now is what we presented at Field Check back in December. After we presented this plan, we had heard concerns about the amount of closure time with our different phasing that we have. And so, Simon, would you walk them through kind of what we showed them at Field Check? And then we can then go over some of the things that we're going to look into as we move into final design to help maybe mitigate some of these closure times.
And Simon and Stephen, I apologize. I think we've got about 5 minutes left before our council meeting starts. So.
Okay. So I guess just in the interest of time, let me flip back here. So originally at Field Check, we were looking at roughly closure time of about 12 to 18 months. So what we did, or what we're going to do, is we're going to take a step back and relook at some of these of the construction sequencing, such as, you know, right as it stood in the Field Check plans, we were constructing 191st Street later in the phasing. Well, now we're looking at constructing that early on first. And so we're looking at some of the sub phases to help reduce the amount of time of Gardner-Road closure, as well as interchange ramp closures. Without getting into the weeds, there will be a time where the bridge over I-35 will be closed.
That's gonna have to be as short as possible, and I understand there's difficulties and we can only do what we can do, but with Olathe Health right there and a school on the south side of I-35, that has to be paramount, that amount of time is minimal.
Yeah, and like I said, one of the things that we've asked HDR to do is go back and look at some of this construction sequencing again, to reduce it from 12 to 18 months to something a lot less. Now, we don't really know that time yet until we get down into the details of adjusting this phasing, but we hear your concerns and we understand.
And then we have one last, Mr. Roush.
Yeah, thank you. And I know it's getting late and we got to move on to the next meeting. My name is Jerry Roush and I work with RS Associates. We currently own the convenience store in question. You know, we serve approximately 1,100 customers a day. We have 25 employees. We pay a tax of about $300,000 a year to the city. We're a long-standing business. We've been there for a long time. You know, what I'm hearing, and this is directed more towards the KDOT folks, is a lot of assumption, a lot of we really don't know, a lot of there's going to be continued talks. We want the opportunity to sit down and to visit with the KDOT folks As some of you may or not know, we already have had an agreement in place that assures us that our entrance wouldn't be closed down, and we've made quite a bit of concession in order to work with the city on that. You know, I think what that I can guarantee is that if we do close that entrance, we close the business. We close the business, we lay off employees. We lay off employees, they have to go find another job. The revenue that we generate today goes away. The property, I can't even tell you what would happen to that. I mean, that was just going to be an eyesore. I know that the good folks of Gardner does not want to see an eyesore coming off the highway because of an entrance closure. I believe that we can find a way that we can work together to keep our entrance open. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rush. All right, thank you, Stephen and Simon for joining us.
I think a follow-up conversation might be.
Yeah, I second that.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Would you be willing, gentlemen, to come in for a second session once the design is a little bit further down the road? And I know that we also have very interested third parties, business entities here that want to also continue this discussion.
Okay, that would be great. We'd be willing to do that. Like I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, we have meetings set up with some of the business owners. So I would ask that Olathe Health and Phillips 66, if you would like to have some stakeholder meetings, we are, please go through Tim and he will look at or get a hold of us with open schedules, and we'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss the concerns with them.
Sooner rather than later.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Okay, it is 7:01, Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order, please rise.